like, let me ask these questions a little bit more specifically, because my opinion is that it really matters your point of entry to jujitsu. And so let me ask you, maybe somebody's a parent right now and they
Yeah.
have a child that is under 10, anywhere from what, I don't know what the youngest will take, say 5 to 10. And what do you think a little person's experience in that first month is like? And if you are a parent, what have you observed could be frustrating to a child as they go to it?
Hmm.
And maybe on the other side, over enthusiasm, where they like it a little too much and end up getting hurt or hurting somebody
Yeah.
else. Like when we talk about the first 4 weeks for a child, what do you see in that area?
I think for a child, end up even being a little bit easier in a way that the kids they start to have fun right away, right? So jujitsu for a kid, it needs to be fun. That's is one of the most important things. It needs to be fun. I'm not saying that the class should be the whole time frame of the class should be games. That's not the way how it is.
Right.
But the way how we're gonna translate the technique for a 5, 6, 7 years old will always change, right? It won't be the same, even though you can be training the same technique a kid and adult. But the way how we're gonna present the technique and the details for a kid is completely different than adult, right? So it should be fun. The kid, I guarantee, you're going to be having a lot of fun in the class, a physical activity. You're going to have some drills, some coordination drills, and everything else. But for a parent, I think the harder part is see sometimes the kid is struggling, maybe in a sparring or in
Yeah.
a position, right? Dealing with the defeat.
Sure.
And sometimes having depend on which parent you can have on your school, you can even you can definitely see a difference between the kids' behavior when the dad or the mom is there, when they're not watching, right? The kids sometimes always want to try to praise the parents,
Mm-hmm.
so they keep doing exercise, looking back, do
Yeah.
exercise, looking back to have the approval, right? But a parent should try to understand a class structure, right? On okay, why the warm-up is like that, why the
Right.
explanation is like this, why you were training with my kid, type of movements, and let a little bit the kid be like a free time on that period of time,
Right.
right? Let them have fun, train, sweat, and struggle a little bit. We know how important it is. I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine how hard it is to see your kid, right, your son or your daughter struggling a little bit and getting frustrated.
Right.
But this is just gonna make them better. And kids are like sponges, right? They're just learn all of a sudden things that you were teaching them months ago, and they just start to do it. It's just click.
Yeah, when I think about, and the first 4 weeks are very fresh for me. For you, it's like 20 years ago. For me, it's very recent, right? So, I mean, I really relate to the very beginners, and I have 5 children, and so I appreciate what you're saying in terms of what it might feel like as a parent. It's different, obviously, because
Mm-hmm.
but. You know better than I do, but my recommendation as a parent when you see your kids is to think of it much in the way you might think of learning a language. I think of jujitsu as you're developing a vocabulary of movement,
Perfect.
and when you're a kid, it's easier to pick up languages than it is when you're
Yeah.
grizzly and old like me. And so I think a theme through each section, each phase of your life that I'm going to ask you about, people if they enter in at this stage of their life, is that it will be natural for everybody to want to stop, because
Uh-huh.
unless you're a freak of nature, you're not going to know how to do everything on the first try.
Yeah.
This is
Mm-hmm.
a vocabulary that's built over time, and often, by doing it wrong and letting somebody show it you right. So, I mean, would you agree with this? I mean, if you're a parent and a kid's reaction is that they want to quit after the second one, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should be forcing children necessarily, but encouraging at the least, like, hey, let's give it some time before you make your decision to
Yes.
stop or go forward. I mean, is that fair, you think? Or
It is. I agree 100% on what you're saying, Peter. And also, I think the way how the jiu-jitsu will be presented for that kid, right? And will change the conversation between the parent, the kid, and the instructor.
right.
Uh, Sometimes you can hear that, right? Like maybe a parent come and, oh, so my son, he doesn't want to do jujitsu anymore, but like, okay, how old is your son? Oh, he's 3, 4 years old. Like, all right, I get it. Maybe the kid got a little bit frustrated. And I'm not saying that this should be something imposed, right?
Right.
Like, don't impose to your kid, but try to explain, like, hey, let's try to have a little bit of conversation. How about we come together for a Saturday class when the parent and the kid can be to, maybe some of schools they have that offer, right? The parent and the kid can do the class together, have a little more fun. Because
Yes, right.
again, the kids, they don't have the same knowledge, they don't think the same way that we think, right? So it's important for them to have fun and be comfortable on the mat.
Right.
So that's like, I believe that's one of the most important things is whoever is leading a class and coaches and the whole environment of the school is make the kids comfortable being on the mat, understanding the values on listening and being respectful. The technique, it just comes together, right? That's is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not like
Yes.
1 month training, you're done.
Right. And look, I think as parents, for those of you who have children, I mean, my recommendation is to be very careful in your selection of the school. And one of the things that I really respect about my professor, Professor Lucas here, is that he's connecting the physical activity to character, and that it's not just about being able to speak this vocabulary, this language of jiu-jitsu, but it's about the type of person that you're becoming. And I have an opinion too, Professor, in terms of jiu-jitsu as a sport in the context of our really athletic kids, and that nowadays it seems that we always want to funnel kids into being a specialist early in life athletically, rather than a very diverse exposure to sports. And I'm a very big fan, not just as kids, because I think it's valuable throughout your entire life, but of exposing particularly children to lots of different athletic languages, right? Like the language of soccer and basketball, football, and jiu-jitsu. If you're exposed to many different languages, my opinion is that you become better at each of those. I mean, do you agree with that? Sure. Like, you don't necessarily just do jiu-jitsu. You can do jiu-jitsu.
No, I agree. And I think sometimes some parents or some people in general, they look in a bad way when you kind of like burn out a little bit of jiu-jitsu, right? And then you want to take a little break. And then you think that that's the end of the world. Oh my God, I don't love jiu-jitsu anymore. No, it's not like that. Jiu-jitsu is going to be there forever.
Right.
It's not a seasoning sport, right? So that's something that fascinated me here in the United States, the ability on kids on every season, they can pick different sports. And like you're saying, being exposed to different things, train different part of their bodies, get their coordination and evolve their skills and see what they really like, right? So maybe when they do football in 1 year, oh, I love football. Okay, but it's done. So we're just going to play it next year. Jiu-jitsu can do that the whole year, right? So it's important that we keep that maybe 2, sometimes 3 times a week, but at the same time, understanding, being sensitive enough in a way that, okay, my kid might be getting too excited about jiu-jitsu, training every day for months. It might be good you try to step back a little bit just to preserve the whole journey. Right. It's really, it's hard when you see a kid training for so long, 10 years straight, but at the end of the day, they're still 13, 14 years old. They don't want to see jiu-jitsu anymore.
Yes, right.
They just burn out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, all of us, right? If you eat just grapes, then, after a point in time, you hate grapes, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how delicious they may be at the start. Well, let me ask you.
And the kids, sorry to interrupt you,
not at all.
Peter, but the kids there have this really fun part that they don't get sore the way how we do. Right. Even if they get some small injury, accidents happen, they will just recover super fast. It's not something like that. It's a trauma. It's right that all of us over getting a little bit old, we just have this on us, right? Like, so let them have fun. Understand that some days will be good. Some days they're going to cry and sparring. That's not the end of the world. You just try. It's just their way to understand how to lead with the frustration, right? Day by day, they start to understand things better, start to correct themselves on positions, click their coordination and everything a little bit more. It is really fun to watch. It's really fun to watch their progress.
So let me turn to like I'm going to try not to attach years to this, but like how old you necessarily would be.
Mhm.
But let's take the athlete or the non-athlete, however we want to describe it, but in a phase of their life where everything on their body works properly. Like I was talking with Professor Tom earlier. He's like, would you trade, you know, having big muscles versus joints that work properly? You know, I mean, because my joints, I don't think there's a single one that works as God intended. And so let's say you're youthful in your ability to move. And so you're not restricted because your body has been injured. Um, and so now you're entering it. Maybe you have an athletic background, maybe you don't, but your ability to learn jujitsu isn't impinged because either you're older and your joints
Mhm.
don't work because you've been sedentary or all that. We'll get to that group next, but you're a person where your body's youthful and it works the way your brain tells it to work.
Yeah.
What is that like what's the first 4 weeks for that person like?
And what age group are we talking about?
Well, so for me, listen, and you get to be a certain age, the buckets extend. So I'm thinking about a teenager up
Okay.
to maybe 27, 30. In my mind, you might have had a catastrophic injury, and that's true, right? So we'll
Mhm.
lump those people in with us old guys. But if you haven't had a catastrophic injury, you also haven't had the repetitive motion injuries of just being, 30, 40 years into being athletic just takes its toll. The body just does not last forever and over
Yeah.
time degrades. So it's an athlete in that 12, 15 to 27, 30 that hasn't had a terrible injury. So they're used to being able to move properly.
Mhm.
So they may think of themselves as like a really good athlete, but they're stepping into
Yeah.
this kind of foreign arena.
I think the biggest challenge will be for the professor, not
Oh, yeah.
on those 4 weeks, and not necessarily for that individual, because for what you're describing here, I'm picturing someone super athletic and with different backgrounds in sports and probably successful in whatever they did before. So you're definitely gonna have some ego coming into your school.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's hard, like, for those people that they can rely themselves so well on their body, on their right natural skills,
Right.
to get hurt, right? Like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how come they will accept someone 30 years older, uh, lighter, whatever it is, and tapping them out,
Right.
right? Or someone even younger, less coordinated, less, not that fast, not as strong, tap them out.
Right.
I think the biggest challenge there will be for the professor, try to put some leash in a good way on that individual, and like, hey, try to explain little by little every day, because for those individual, again, relying themselves so much, the frustration is 1,000 times worse
Yeah.
when things doesn't go on their way, right?
Right. Yeah. So for me, like what that translates to on the individual side is that you come in as a 20-year-old athlete and you're used to being successful in all your athletic endeavors. You're going to carry that image of yourself as the
Mm-hmm.
person who usually wins the contest,
Yeah.
because, you've collected your trophies or your winnings, or, you're there because you're athletic and things. And so in my mind, what I hear you saying is that the frustration you could feel as an athlete is, how come I'm not winning? Your ego is
Yeah.
telling you, hey, what's the deal? Don't you know I'm a
Yeah.
champion?
How come I losing to this guy,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And in jiu-jitsu, you see that all the time.
right. Yeah, and so I think, so if you're listening and you're a person that is looking for just another athletic outlet, um, I think, those first 4 weeks, to just like learning a language, just let's get your letters. Don't worry about even
Yeah.
words and sentences, and accept the fact that you may step into a boxing ring having been a great football or basketball player. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
can like experience boxing in
Yeah.
a much less humiliating manner than like you step onto the mats in jujitsu. You can really be surprised at, the type of body across from
Yes.
you winning, so to speak. And I hate to use that word winning sometimes, but it's
and
a
and
different
also,
experience.
yeah, and I think another thing is jiu-jitsu is so different, right? Maybe most of the sports you're gonna be playing standing up.
Yes.
So if you're a good basketball player, you might gonna be able to, I don't know, pick up soccer a little bit better because your footwork, like just whatever it is. In jiu-jitsu, you're most part of the times you're gonna be on your knees or
Hmm.
your back on the ground,
Right.
right? And it doesn't have anything similar to that in physical activity. We will translate that type of muscle memory and body strength and leverage and everything else,
Right.
right? It's funny to see super like this type of individual, super athletic and young and strong, and yeah, you can see they wanna pick up a good fight and struggle, but not giving up, right? They have a big heart and everything, but every single time that things doesn't go on their way, you see the
Right.
frustration face, and that's again, it's the job of the professor or the instructor that is teaching the class to come, hey, you were doing great, keep like that, look, try to correct this, you're just a little bit different, again, give the expectations,
Right.
right? They will measure that.
Yeah, I mean, with the one exception, by the way, is that when it comes to physical vocabularies, is that you always know when you have a white belt who's been a wrestler, because those people have been on the
True.
ground, you know, and
Uh-huh.
and Charlie in our school is roughly my same age. He's younger than me, but not meaningful enough. But Charlie can do whatever he wants with me. He's coached wrestling for much of his life, it seems like. Those guys are really suited to it. So the first 4 weeks for the athletic younger person, um, being, I think, from an injury prevention, if you can dial back your ego and recognize that you're learning a language that has a lot more finesse in it that might meet your eye. I think it takes a
Yes.
while, like when you're watching other people do it, to
Mhm.
understand why they're so good at it. I don't think jujitsu, when you look at somebody dunk a basketball, you don't have to wonder why that's awesome. But when somebody, positions their body and they're heavy on their person, that's not always apparent to the onlooker, especially if you have
Yeah.
no point of reference. Is that fair to say,
Yep.
you think? Yeah.
It is. It makes total sense.
Well, then we have to turn our attention to the next group that I am a member of.
And let me just say one more thing here, Peter. I've seen that happen more than once, a couple of times. If you have two type, uh, let's not classify type of people, but let's pretend you have someone, I don't know, a man, 140 pounds, okay,
Mhm.
with some good background in physical activity, but nothing spectacular. And then you have same age, another man with 220 pounds, okay, or 200 pounds.
Mhm.
Same background, same level of coordination, everything. The difference when those two people will be sparring against each other for the first 6 months or so, the bigger guy will be crushing
Mhm.
99.9% of the times the little guy.
Right.
After that, the little guy starts to take the back, armbar,
Right.
and flip, and things start to change like so much. Again, because the little guy, he needs to rely himself on technique. He needs to learn that. He doesn't
Right.
have the strength to fight back, right? He
Right.
doesn't have the weight. So that's his only tool. The big guy, the techniques, so, but the strength is still always will overstrain and weight most of the people. So end up unconsciously start to get a little bit lazy on details in how to learn the technique,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I've seen that happen so many times.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're a non-jujitsu player and you're listening to this, it's such it's such a unique space athletically, because your knowledge and ability to execute based on what you know, it's just different in this sport versus other sports that I've been involved in. And because we only got about 10 minutes here, I want to make sure that we address my people. And so let's say you're now, I can check several boxes. You've been hurt, and so your joints don't work very nicely, or you're older, like me, so maybe you're not been injured, but your joints are just not as healthy as they were when you were younger, because as we get older, things are just different there. In the first 4 weeks for those people, Obviously I could speak from my experience, but what do you observe in general? Like what frustrates those guys or ladies, or, those people?
Is the understanding, right? Doesn't know what is good, what is bad. If the next move that they're pretending to do is something that's gonna help or not. And sometimes it can be even like a lack of coordination that you need to adjust, right? You need to adapt. And that's another amazing thing about jiu-jitsu. The same technique won't be displayed on the same way by everyone.
Right.
I might do arm bar different than you do. For maybe you are more flexible than me, I might be faster. So we're gonna keep adjusting on our body type, right? And that adjustment, it takes time. It's not in a month and all the adjustments happening. But if you already have other injuries, you are let's see upper 40s, 50 years old. Be patient. Be ready to have a lot of fun as you learn. Don't rush everything. Listen your body, because again, you're going to be doing something different, and yes, you're going to be sore. Be sore is not necessarily a bad thing. Right? It's a sign that you were working. So you're going to be a little bit sore. You doesn't need to train every day on the beginning. Teach your body how to move. Go slow on the technique, on a specific training. And if you're already sparring, go slow on that. Right? I always try to think that way. When you're learning how to drive, you're not getting a car on your very first time and driving 120 miles an hour on the first day. You're driving like a 20, 25, 15. You're understanding how the car responds to you, react to you. Your body's the same way. The technique will work exactly the same way. And we recently have some new student coming on the school that we go, and I think it's about 55. Didn't start in the shape that he wants to. He just completed his first month, and he said like, "Hey, how about that?" He's like, "I'm loving. I have so much fun. Like, I could never expect that I have so much fun doing jiu-jitsu."
Yeah, I have to say, I think that for the older athlete and the athlete that has been injured sufficiently that they're like really worried about getting hurt again, is that the anxiety of injury is high for those people. And what I'd like to offer to anybody who's in that bucket of people is that if you come in with a very humble attitude and don't worry about winning anything, your goal is to just persist and to come back. And I haven't experienced many jiu-jitsu gyms, but I've been in lots of different athletic cultures, and you create a culture for us of safety in that even the folks, nobody gets hurt in your your presence. And I think that may not be true everywhere. People may have a more combat type of like, hey, that's part of the culture. But if you're worried about being hurt and you find the right professor, the right school, you can safely do this. And what I can promise you is that if you're someone listening and you're wondering, will I be able to do it? What you'll be able to do it is better in 6 months than you are in the first month. Like you may not do it the way you want to do it in your head, but you'll do it better than you do it in the beginning. And if you continue to go, it will just get better and better. Because I'm no natural, I can promise you that.
And for those that are hearing us and just starting jiu-jitsu or are thinking about joining jiu-jitsu school, never measure your progress with the others, but always with yourself, right? So in your very first month, if you think you didn't learn anything, try to imagine you a month ago.
Right.
See, like, if you could fight against yourself a month ago, who's gonna win now?
Yeah.
Right?